All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a live stream of the Aging Together podcast, season 4, sponsored by Heart Mobility, revolutionizing those steel metal gray grab bars from the 1960s with their newest product, Safety Grip. If you're tuning in live, please use the chat to introduce yourselves and ask any questions along the way. Our guest today will answer them at the end of the show. Today's guest is Reverend Lorna J. Hines, a social worker, a renowned licensed clinical social worker, certified medium, intuitive counselor, and behavioral health expert. She is also an ordained minister and author of Straight Talk from a Wise Woman, Tears, Trauma, and a Healing Path. She was a caregiver for her parents and her in laws. Ms. Hines, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I am so looking forward to talking about my experience, both as a clinician and as a caregiver. And my hope and my keen and sincere desire is that your listeners will be helped, will be uh, uh, detached, perhaps, from feelings of isolation and powerlessness.
Thank you so much. Why don't you just get started? Tell us about your background as a social worker, your passion for the work that you do, and your experience in caregiving for your parents and your in laws.
Well, I actually feel and believe that helping others is part of my DNA. It is something that even as a youngster, I just have that kind of feeling and focus. My father, who used to do income taxes for people as a side job, came home once with a pictorial essay about women that were in a jail called the Tombs. It was an infamous jail in New York City. It was in black and white, but he gave me this pictorial essay, and I just looked at it over and over and over again. I couldn't believe that the women would suffer in such a horrific environment. And I think I was maybe 11 or 12 at that time. And it kind of put a stamp on my body, mind, and spirit, I think, because I felt at that time that I really wanted to help. And so, just to make a long story short, I went to college. I had a major in sociology and political science and religion. And the chair of my department at my senior year, he said, "Well, what are you going to do? You're going to graduate. What are you going to do?" And he said, "You have you have the energy, the brightness, and intellectual capability to be a social worker, and that's what I think you should do." And the rest is history. I left uh, undergraduate. I went to Columbia, and I have had a career that started out as a line social worker. Uh, and then I just my career trajectory is one that, starting as a line social worker and going up as a clinical supervisor, as a manager, and then on and on and on for the past probably 43 years. Um, I have ended my career as a worker in public service uh, in 2014. And at that time, I was assistant division director for mental health and substance abuse for New Jersey, and also director of workforce development and training for the Department of Human Services in New Jersey. But again, New Jersey is only part of my picture. Most of my work has been focused in New York, in New York State, in a variety of positions. Um, I was COO of Brooklyn Children's Psychiatric Center. I was chief of mental health services for Rockland Psychiatric Center. So I can certainly go on. But through that, as you can imagine, I also had a private practice since 1993 because the clinical work, the idea that I can have a face to face contact and relationship with someone was always foremost in my mind. And besides that, I do believe I have the heart of a teacher. And I also served as assistant director of uh, uh, assistant professor at NYU Silver School of Social Work, Ramapo, and also Yeshiva. Now, I ended up losing my sister in 1994, and I ended up being the sole caregiver for my parents. My father had a series of all types of chronic illnesses, everything from diabetes, high blood pressure, neuropathy, and then, of course, it went into dementia. Uh, he also, quite frankly, had a history of alcoholism, but he was able, with a lot of support from myself and uh, the various systems, he was able to overcome it and was an active uh, person in AA and really did a good job finally towards the end of his life. But as you can imagine, that uh, alcohol abuse affects not only your 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 spirit and your just your soul. It also affects very much your body. And so some of these illnesses that he had affected his body. Um, it was very difficult to care for him and to coordinate all of the different services he required. And I guess later on I can go into it in more details if you prefer. But shortly after his eventual death, and it was really quite difficult because he was in a nursing home or rehab. Some of them call themselves that. They couldn't handle him, and they basically threw him out. You know, and it was very frustrating and very isolating because I really didn't know what to do in terms of caring for him. But shortly after his death, my mother experienced a decline. Now, she did not have all these medical problems. However, she underwent a traumatic experience where she was beaten by someone, actually a family member. And unfortunately, and she had been doing very, very well, I have to tell you. She had her own apartment. She was involved in church activities. She would visit family members. She was really totally able to care for herself. But after this beating, which, as you can imagine, was very, very traumatic for her. And by the way, we weren't absolutely sure if the person had AIDS. So not only was she going through the traumatic experience of that, we also had her on antiviral drugs just to ensure that she would not be infected because the person also bit her. So her decline was just like from here to here in terms of her mental capabilities. She hallucinated at times, feeling someone was trying to come into the apartment. Um, she was very anxious. And we were able to get her good care because, as you can imagine, using some of my background as a clinical social worker, I was able to utilize that skill in searching for good resources. She had an excellent geriatric psychiatrist who, after a while, was able to stabilize a number of these symptoms. But nonetheless, the psychiatric symptoms around trauma led her uh, into dementia and eventually Alzheimer's. And the uh, the rather, shall I say, difficult goal I gave myself was to keep her at home because this is what she wanted, and I I sound rather ambivalent because for many they would have said this is all too much. She belongs in some type of care, institutionalized care. But at the same time, my my sense of love for her and my empathy uh, really kind of ruled the roost and forced me to do everything I possibly could to have her remain in the community. And I think looking back on it, though, I can tell you absolutely that there was not a second, not a minute that I experienced, and I'm stuttering a little bit, recalling some of the difficulties, but there wasn't a second that it was traumatic for me. Absolutely. Um, I I don't allow myself to go and look back on those years too much because it it reenacts within me the difficulties, the conflicts, the challenges that I was going through, and the isolation. And though I had some limited help from family members, the major portion was on me to make the decisions, to talk to the doctor, to get the staff to care for her, because for many, many years she required 24-hour care in her apartment. So that's my story, at least part of it. But if you have more particular questions about some of the activities. And by the way, I didn't mention it, but I should. At the same time, my husband and I were going through the care for his sister and his mother. Initially, they were in the South, and then we had to move them from the South up here to where near where we lived, and that presented its own set of traumas. So he couldn't necessarily look upon me for assistance, and I couldn't look upon him for assistance, but yet we did seek assistance and support from one another.
Yeah. Wow. What a whirlwind of years of experience for you. I won't delve too much into the specifics of your experience because, as you just referenced, it is traumatic and it is a lot to think back to. Um, and I can resonate with that with my years on the front lines, right? Over the years of just wanting to forget and black out a bunch of years so I never have to think about them again. Um, and I've done that before. There's been people who reach out asking like, "Hey, what were those years like for you?" or "What was that like for you?" Specifically during the pandemic, and you feel yourself tensing up and shaking and stuttering like you were just saying because it does there's a great book that said your body keeps a score, right? And so you forget, you block it out, but your body just remembers that that was traumatic for you. And so it starts reacting and your nervous system starts responding to it. So I won't put you through that piece of it. But I do want to talk about how, you've framed this whole experience of caregiving as a traumatic experience, which it is for a lot of people. And I will say that it is like that for most people, um, especially for those who have no insight into what that journey is going to look like and they just get thrown into it. They've never experienced it before, they've never talked about it or heard about it from anybody else before. And now all of a sudden they're in the thick of it. They don't quite recall how they got there. but then they look back on it and it was a truly traumatic time for them in their life. And it shapes people. It really shapes how who they become after that journey ends. And so maybe from a higher level of thinking, can you talk more about how or why that experience can be so traumatic for people and the science of trauma in a sense, right?
Well, let me try to answer your question. And if you hear me bouncing back and forth between being a clinician but also having the experience, you'll forgive me. In retrospect, I don't know if I took enough time to examine the resources in the community that uh, might have helped. Although I don't think there was much there. I think we're doing somewhat of a better job presently. For example, in my town, there is a caregivers group. The closest I got to any type of assistance was the Alzheimer's Association of New York, and they had social workers that you could talk to help you figure out different strategies for managing behavior of your loved one. There came a time that my mother would want to leave the house. She had that sundowner syndrome, and that was very difficult both for her and for her uh, aides that were working with her. So the Alzheimer's Association was pretty much my only go-to until later on in her eventual demise when a visiting nurse had a hospice program that she was in. And they had different staff. They had a chaplain, they had a counselor, and they had a nurse that worked with her one on one. And that was very, very helpful. Uh, More so with the shall I say, meat and potatoes aspects of what it is you need to have caregiving. I think the emotional support really didn't come as much until my mother's eventual end, and then the social worker reached out to me and offered me the grief counseling that I really, really needed, because at the same time that my mother passed, uh, I lost 10 other people in the family and friends. And by the by the time from 2006 to 2016 to 2017, I found that I was really an emotional wreck. What I mean by that is I ended up feeling so numb without without being able to express emotion. And you would think that because you don't feel any emotion, you might feel good, but that doesn't feel good at all. Um, it really feels awful. And I ended up almost like walking around like a zombie. And I want to emphasize with you, all through this time with both parents and the in-laws, I didn't take time off. I did try to get some type of family leave, but I was denied it. And you see, so there are systemic issues around this whole caregiving experience that we need to look at and examine. So you hear me going back and forth. Um, and I didn't have the wherewithal and the strength to even fight it. Maybe get an attorney or something to fight my employer, who refused to give me the time off that I needed, because I really needed to take time off and just care for her and also care for myself and other members of my family.
That's so terrible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's terrible. And you're absolutely right. That is, the systemic barriers to caregiving leave and caregiving policies for employees who need that are just they're so limited. And I'm sorry that you had to experience that. I mean that's truly um, not great. And you're right. In that moment, you probably didn't have the energy to even think about how to go around it and be like, "Hey, no, I legally you have to give me this," right?
No, I think there may be a tendency for employers to think that you're trying to shirk your responsibility as an employee, that this is going to be vacation for you or this is going to be something for you to enjoy. Excuse me.
Oh, right. What a great vacation it is to care for your ailing parents.
Exactly. And that you're trying to shirk your responsibilities. But it was just, and I had all the documentation. She had a great team. Her doctor was really excellent in trying to help me, to help her. But now, I want to say to you that I'm talking about complex trauma here, and to tell you the truth, had I seen a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a clinical social worker at the time, I might not have met the criteria for post traumatic stress disorder. But I will tell you, uh, complex trauma was definitely a part of my experience. But you see, just as you say, there's a tendency for kind of depersonalization where you are pushing aside those feelings because you had to keep going. Keeping in mind, I continued to work full time. I had my private practice because I'm a worker and I'm a person that believes in what I do and my dedication to my clients, my whomever, and I was up there in my position. So you kind of, as you said, compartmentalize, your day. I would get off work often, and this is at work, taking time when needed to manage emergency calls, or, this is not working or that. Um, and then getting off work and then going directly to my mother's house or to my father's. And so we're traveling from New Jersey or parts of other parts of New York City to where they lived in the Bronx, taking care of that, taking care of whatever was going on. Um, and I remember sometimes I wanted to stop before I went to their house to go just take a walk, just to walk and try to clear my mind from the work experience to the caregiver experience. But there was never enough time for me to do it all. And so then I would stay with them and manage whatever needed to be managed, and then back home to try to take care of all the things that needed to be taken care of in my family. I'm a mother, and I had my child here, and so he had to eat, and he had to have clean clothes. So there was always this, go, 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 go. And then the same thing on the weekends. On the weekends, I had to often fill in for the aides. I had to make sure there was grocery shopping and medication. I developed kind of like a mini a mini hospital because I would make them, do a medication record. I would make them do a note as to how she was doing and what needed to happen so that I could have an ongoing and regular understanding of what was happening. So I what ended up would happen is I would be there pretty much all of Sunday till the late evenings, and then I had to get back home and then start it all over again. So, what I can say is, in looking back on it, that I should have screamed somehow for help, but I didn't know who to scream to. Uh,
Yeah. You
that
brought up something that comes up a lot, and that's the sandwich generation of caregiving, right? You had your child, you had your parents, and you had a full time job and your own practice. And this is something that is coming up more and more often now, especially in my generation, where we're having kids later, but our parents are also getting older and staying active and well older longer. And we're at the heights of our careers, and all of a sudden everything seems like it's crumbling down. You've got your parents who automatically suddenly need you, you've got your kids who still need you, and you're still trying to like go around your work and show up in every single place that you need to show up to. And it's causing, this was part of why I got so passionate about this work, was because people need to know, one, that there are resources and services out there that can make this journey so much better, and not easier necessarily, maybe to a certain extent, but better. And two, we have to take the time to process as you go and not process everything at once at the end, because that's how it turns into such I think, a long-term traumatic effect, versus having the time and the space and the energy to process things as they're happening, so that you're not bundling it all up inside. And then when it's over, like you said, you go numb, but then it does come crumbling down at some point, right?
most definitely right. And again, in looking back at things, I didn't allow myself to experience in the full extent the extent to which this horrific decline, how it manifested. Now keeping in mind, both parents, my father was doing tax returns in the midst of his dementia. I mean, these are people that were tremendously gifted and skilled. The same thing with my mother. She was the office manager for the U.S. Passport Agency when it was in New York City. And again, she had so many other social and civic organizations that she was in and that she led. And besides that, she was a helper. And I think that that is where, in part, I've got this strong need to help, because she was always involved with family members that needed work or needed this or that or the other, and she was always out there moving. And so to see the eventual decline that she had become, when I even think about it now, it hurts very much, because I had to see that decline. I had to see that significant change and experience it, and just I had to keep going, as you say, and be with her and also with my father in the particular circumstance that they found themselves in, whether it was my mother being a little like hallucinating a little bit, or my father speaking very slowly and deliberately, very different from the way he spoke and the way he was. I had to be there in that experience and do my best to respond to whatever was needed at that time. And so this idea of detachment, I think, is something that many caregivers, such as myself, experience. We have to detach the hurt, the horror, the angst that we experience seeing how our parents decline, and knowing within our minds that this isn't the person that we knew, and where is that person? But we can't allow ourselves to experience that too much because of whatever need that is required at that particular time.
Do you ever feel like sometimes that comes across as being too jaded or not caring? Because I can see that, like, if, like there are instances when parents are asking you for support because they can't do it anymore. And, you're like, okay, fine, like I'll do it because we're in like fix it mode. But then sometimes they feel like we don't care that they're declining. And it's not necessarily that we don't care, it's just that we grieve in private, right? We don't want to show them that we're upset or affected by this. The same way that they protected us when we were younger, I feel like now, we protect them in not having to see when we're upset or when we're, sad and we're just in fix it mode. So how do you, I guess, from that professional lens and from the caregiver lens, how do you toe that line of being, you know, uh, giving and helping, but also not coming off as being too jaded or not caring?
Well, I think oftentimes the conflict is how do you, and I'm saying this in addition to what you're saying, how do you allow or support their desire for self determination and mm, the wish that they have to impact and rule their lives, when in fact you know that it's going to be on you to try to make that happen. And I think the jadedness you're talking about is like you're saying, well, she wants all this, but who's going to do it? It's going to be on me. I'm going to have to make this happen. And how am I going to make this happen? Or I'm doing the best I can. I'm here, I'm here, there, and everywhere. Um, and it happened also with my father, and I would get into arguments, well, not arguments, but conflict with his doctor because the doctor was in his background was cardiology, so he was doing everything he could to protect my father's heart. My father eventually succumbed to the chronic heart failure. So I would say to the doctor, wait a minute, you got to give him something. Look, he's upset, or he says, I'm not giving him anything if it's going to impact his heart. And I'm saying to myself, well, it's nice of you to protect his heart, but I'm protecting his body, mind, spirit, heart, physical, mental, everything. And this is really impossible. And just to give you a FYI, he ended up being treated at the same place where he worked as admissions officer. And the place where he worked, the supervisor would always depend on him to develop the reports, all the statistical stuff. This is where he so I would imagine that not only was I experiencing the decline, but so was the staff. He knew this cardiologist before he became ill. And so I'm sure the cardiologist had feelings, about his decline as well. So I think for me, the jadedness came in. Well, you want this, you want that, you want this, but I got to figure out how to do it. And it's nice of you to want all these things, but I don't know how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, it's really creating those boundaries for yourself and for them, right? So that you don't overextend yourself more than you already are. Since we're on the topic of jadedness, I know some of the work that you really do is on compartmentalization. Let's talk. Can you tell us, like, define it for the people who might not be familiar with it, and let's talk about what that actually means when it's as related to maybe trauma in general, but the complex trauma that you're talking about and how you can, I call it, separate different events from each other and separate yourself from everything that's happening, right? But I'm sure you have a different, maybe better definition of what that actually means.
Well, I want to do something first, if you don't mind me doing this, because as I mentioned to you, I have the heart of a teacher and I have spent a lot of time teaching. But I don't think you can separate uh, oneself, and I will say myself, by with the context we're in. So if I absolutely believe in intersectionality, not only in terms of roles that we have and experiences that we have in our environment, but it's also important to look at it in terms of feeling states and the extent to which that there, and I do talk about this in my book, um, the extent to which these feeling states have an alignment, have a relationship with the various aspects of our role and our identity and definition. Now, I say that to you because this we're discussing my experience as being a caregiver as if the larger environment was okay and that we were not affected by some of the larger environment issues. Now, I mentioned this to you because, again, in my book, I start talking about the extent to which I was impacted by the murder of George Floyd and a number of the different murders that were part of that whole horrific number of years. Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, all the different. So you see, as a caregiver, there is a larger environment that I am involved in and that I'm a part of that has the opportunity or definitely has a place for a traumatic experience. Uh, Quite frankly, and again, I focus on this in my book, that the look on Derek Chauvin's face, the officer that was actually committing the murder, the look on his face did something to me. Uh, in fact, when I first saw it on TV, and I promise I will get to your question. When I first saw it on TV, I said to my husband, "Oh, this guy, this officer must have beef with," and I said it in that way. He had beef with George Floyd because there's something else going on here, other than a police and a alleged criminal. And because the vacant look on his eyes was to me almost like a killing machine. But be that as it may, I want to again emphasize that I'm an individual that's part of a larger environment that has an impact on my mind, body, and spirit. So if I'm a caregiver that's experiencing different types of trauma, I'm also an individual, a Black woman in a larger environment that has that does have the experience of different types of trauma, separate and apart from the caregiver. So, what we're talking about is a situation in which there's a larger and larger and larger experience of trauma. And uh, Leon Chestang, a really great theorist, social worker, also talks about the different ways that people such as myself have to handle, you know, our experiences and the extent to which we have our face that we use with our family members and those that we love and care about, and then this different face that has to manage our work environment and you know, going to the bank or whatever the case may be. And I say that because I believe that many minority people, such as myself, we learned the importance of having these different faces in different environments. And so when we have experiences of different types of trauma, we know that we have to maybe bite our lip, or we have to stay silent in order to be able to master, bless you, in able to master and to thrive in the environment. So, for example, I don't know why this is coming to me, but in my the end of my first year at Columbia, one of my professors who obviously had a racial problem said to me, "You people can't write, and you will never be a social worker because you're too intuitive." Now, this was not, 1960. This was probably 1974. And you see the way I spoke about it, it's still something that is a part of me. So again, what I'm trying to, and I bite my lip. I mean, I have, I have thoughts of wanting to choke her at times, which I did not do. But in the moment, I said to her, "Well, I do plan to become a social worker, and I'd like to know what it is that I need to do in order to pass your class." So all of that rage, all of that angst, all of that strong feeling that I had, because it was just me and her, that had to be pushed to the side, not dealt with, because I had to handle the business at hand, and I had to fulfill the prize that I was trying to obtain in my graduate studies. So there is I believe, in the experience of many African Americans and other groups as well, where there are this intersectional identity. There is for many, a constant uh, situation in which there is a need to compartmentalize different traumatic experiences in order to survive. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I have been stopped on the New Jersey Turnpike along with many African Americans. And again, one man that stopped me, he couldn't explain why he stopped me, other than at that time I had a car that was associated with, I guess, drug dealers. Why, I don't know. But, also I was a black person driving the car. So he could not explain why he stopped me. And I explained to him, officer, and again, compartmentalizing that rage, because I knew he had a gun. I knew that it was just me and him, and this is well before they had cameras and so forth. But I had to be quiet. And I said to him, "You stopped me for no reason. And do you realize that I have to go pick up my children at daycare, and I'm going to be late picking them up? I wasn't speeding. I wasn't doing anything wrong, and you stopped me." So again, compartmentalizing, having to put that feeling, that anger, that sense of powerlessness, that sense of dehumanization, you have to put it aside because you have to keep going. Because I knew I needed to go pick up my kids. I knew I had to survive because my family needed me, and I knew that it was just me and him, and the possibility existed that he could have shot me, and that I would have lost my life, and my kids would be out without a mother, my husband without a wife, my mother without her caregiver. So, what I'm trying to put forth here, if I may, is that being a caregiver and needing to compartmentalize the feelings that you have, the experiences you have, the sense of enormous uh, mm, at times not knowing what you're going to do to solve the problem. Yes, indeed, that is a compartmentalization. You must because you say to yourself, there's some way, there has to be some way I can get through this, and I must get through this because my mother, my father, whomever, they have to have this. So, but we cannot remove that experience and the experience of compartmentalization that one feels as an isolated caregiver from the larger picture. So, what we're talking about here is, in many ways, a very unfortunate, a very difficult, a very, at times, insurmountable experience that people like myself may have. So that, again, being a caregiver is only part of the picture, I think, in this traumatic experience that one experiences and one has. Did I
Yeah.
answer the question? I know it was,
Yeah.
kind of
I mean, I think you gave some great examples of what it looks like in practice, right? And I think that's incredibly relevant for everyone in today's climate, with how many things are going on at that bigger system down to what you individually are going through every day, right? A lot of caregivers are feeling extremely helpless, but a lot of them are also feeling hopeless with a lot of, the policy changes and the access to services, depending on where they live, depending to what little resources they maybe had available that might not no longer be available to them in the next few months or years to come, right? There's a lot of that external pressure and just unknown that is probably impacting how they show up as a caregiver. But in the moment when they're caregiving or have to do something, they have to push all those fears aside and push all of that unknown, whatever feelings that they may have about it aside to show up and do what needs to be done. And I also say this for those who maybe disagree with their parents and they still show up, right? Maybe they didn't have the best childhood. Maybe they don't share the best relationship with their parents and they're still showing up and putting all of that aside to do what they need to do in that moment, right? And a lot of that ends up kind of growing on itself if it's not touched, right, or not processed. And so I want to ask, and you mentioned a few times that you just put that fear to the side or that rage to the side or the pain to the side. But then what do you do with it all on the same side, right? Like, do you ever bring it back? Do you ever actually address it? Do you just let it pile up and then it just kind of, blows up one day?
I think that's a very good question, and I suspect that it did pile up quite a bit when I was going through my caregiver experience because I knew that if I allowed myself to experience it and feel it too much, that it would increase my devastation, and I even wonder whether or not it would paralyze me, and not in and enable me to not be able to do what I knew needed to be done. So I definitely, and uh, to be quite honest, I think it's still somewhat compartmentalized because even as I go about my life and presently, when mm, when glimpses and memories of meeting of reliving, uh, rushing to my mother's house on a Sunday and feeling tired and praying that I would get a space to park the car, and uh, just little things like that could have just pushed me over the edge, and making sure I had the money to manage all of the different things that I needed to manage. But again, just pushing those feelings aside and not letting myself and even now, as I say, when I have those thoughts and when I relive, I have to put it aside because, and maybe I need to go back to my therapist, but it's it it still has a strong emotional tone. These memories, they still have, and I'll say to myself, Lorna, you can't deal with this right now. It's too it's too profound. It's too intense. And I'll be honest with you, and it doesn't sound like I'm being the best clinician ever, but I'm not sure I'll ever be able to totally deal with all of those feelings. But in part, I will tell you, and this isn't meant to sound like an advertisement, but in part, I think writing my book was very much having the opportunity to deal with some of those feelings, not only as a caregiver, but some of those wider intersections that I was talking about. So to that end, there has been some catharsis, some insight work done, but there's still some that's there.
Well, that's the therapist side of you, right? We always tell everyone to write and journal as an outlet, and that's what you did, right? That was going to be my next question is, what finally pushed you to write your book? And tell us a little bit about that.
I think it was several things. Um, Part of my background and experience, as you well know, is very spiritual, and I would get a sense of what I would call those beautiful ancestors that are around us, that are supporting us, that work with us, that writing that I needed to write this book. And if I had the opportunity to receive various spiritual readings and spiritual guidance, this issue of writing a book kept coming up over and over and over. And then I don't remember the year, but sometime in the 2000, maybe 15, 16, whatever, but I don't know exact date. All of a sudden, I received a scholarship to go to a writers conference and to have some opportunity to meet people that were involved in publishing and so forth. And it was rather inspiring to be in that grouping. And then I think the following year, a friend encouraged me to go to another writers conference in, I think it was in Richmond, Virginia, where they had not only writers and some very famous people, James Patterson and so forth, but agents would be there that you could talk to about your interests. And so I went to that as well. And they were again, oh yes, very inspired, very supportive. Um, I just thinking about this. I met a author that wasn't even in my same genre, Beth Macy, and she has written a book about two twin boys who were albinos, that were black but albinos, that were stolen from their mother and put into circus. She had a great book. So I got some inspiration there. And then again, when I saw this murder of George Floyd, and felt the horrible feelings. I felt so horrible watching that and being inundated with the feelings. I said, "Whoops, it's time. It's time. You got to do something. You have all these feelings, you have all these thoughts, you have all these experiences. You have to do something with it. Otherwise, this is gonna, make you crazy. Do
Yeah.
it, write it." And I think I just, um, started not even on the computer, just with my hand, pages and pages and pages, one after another, of writings.
That's awesome. I know that I'm so excited to get my hands on a copy and, read your story. And I'll put the link in the show notes for those who are tuning in and interested in reading your book. I can't believe we're at the top of the hour and we could probably keep talking. But to wrap up, I'd love to see if you have any practical tools or tips or resources or mindset shifts that you would recommend for those who are caregiving who may be juggling some of these traumas and trying to compartmentalize?
Well, I'd like to answer your question in this way. Those of us that are in our 60s and 70s and 80s, before we even get to the point where we need ongoing and relentless caregiving, let's take some ownership of our physical, our mental, our emotional health. Are we really being assertive with our physicians and the people that take care of us with our health? Are we following up on different things that need to be followed up on? Are we reviewing our lab tests and our medical records to see if the treatment we're receiving is in line with what we're reading? I mean, oftentimes I think we put all of our resources and all of our sense in our physicians. And I have heard some horror stories over my years of situations in which things were missed with people, things that were it was just right out there, but for whatever reason, it was missed. So I want to speak first to people that are older before you get to your situation where you are disabled. Take ownership of your health. Remember too, this is the time for importance of exercise, keeping your mind working, doing things that prevent a demise in your health. Also, have a conversation with your children or friends or whomever might be in charge of your caregiving, and be clear about making a plan. Don't kind of put a blinder onto this. Be explicit. Well, if something happens, I want to do this, this, and this, or I have a sum of money that is going to be taken care of for my problems. Now, same thing with your potential caregiver. Don't have blinders on. Be prepared. Have the conversations. Begin to look at some of the resources. What is assisted living like? What is this something that your mother or your father can afford? What are the types of insurances? Do you need some type of disabling insurance or insurance that is going to help you if you become disabled? Look at whether or not there are groups in your community that can help you to look at the caregiving experience and what are the different resources that are available to you as a caregiver. Do not suffer in silence. Don't be the powerlessness person that I was, suffering. What are some of the things that your loved one might need? What does Medicare cover? What does Medicare not cover? That doesn't cover a heck of a lot, I will tell you that. So, my message is get off your butt, get out there and start planning and discussing and being aware of what needs that your loved one may require and that you will require. What is your job offer in terms of resources for you? I hope I answered your question.
You did, and I should just hire you to market my care planning services because you just did that in the last 2 minutes. And yes, this is exactly why I do what I do as a care planning consultant is setting people up for success so that they're not trying to navigate it all by themselves and all alone. Lorna, thank you so much for joining me today and being here and for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. This has been so helpful for me as well to be able to talk about not only the conflicts and the problems, but the solutions.
Yes, absolutely. For those tuning in live, thank you so much for joining us. I will be back with another live stream in 2 weeks, same time, same place. See you then.